Welcome, everyone. Today we want to go over Meal Counter, a solution we have built for the Summer Food Service Program. Before I get into things, let's go ahead and meet our presenters for today. So we've got an exciting group. Matthew Esner is one of Collier Technologies account executives. He's a former state agency staff member from Missouri DESE, and he has really been a champion for summer food in this product, a cheerleader, and really even a coach. So it's interesting to me because I know just how strongly you have been interested in trying to improve summer food, but I don't really know what's motivating that. Matthew, I don't know if you could speak to maybe kind of where this all came from. I know you've been here a little bit longer than
Sure,
me.
sure. Yep. Just directly before I came to CTS, I was working with a food manufacturer, and we had a lot of shelf-stable products that were very influential with the summer food service program. So I was getting to work with a lot of sponsors down on the ground level. And then when I got started with CTS, I had multiple states that were interested and were starting to implement and look into some summer food mobile technology. And so it's been a very interesting and exciting last couple of years here with CTS.
Awesome. And I also like to introduce Kathy. She is the Summer Food Service Program Manager from Kentucky DOE. Now, Kathy's not here live with us, but Matthew got a chance to interview her last week. And so we'll play that interview a little bit further on to talk about from a state agency's perspective. And then last but not least, we have me. And so I don't have a lot of experience in this industry. And so it's interesting. What actually drew me to this product is not kind of the typical thing with summer food. It actually kind of the first job I ever wanted to be was an efficiency engineer. If you've ever heard of Cheaper by the Dozen, it was this book that we read as a little kid, and it's about this family, and the dad was this a champion of being able to make factories very streamlined, but at home there's a dozen kids, and so his life was rather chaotic. And anyway, so what was interesting to me about this is coming from other industries, I had no idea what to expect. And so one of the first things I did here is I had to fly out to Sacramento. I met with some of the sponsors piloting this program, and hearing from them firsthand just the hardship that they go through and the things they do for very basic level of things. It really kind of spoke to that inner child in me that wanted to just naturally make things more efficient and better. So without further ado, that's kind of me in a nutshell, at least as far as this product goes. And today what we're going to do is a couple things. We're going to start by looking at just in general high level summer food and talk about some of the barriers and some of the problems that exist in this program. We're going to go through, we'll do a demonstration of the software that we've built. And we'll also, we ran a couple pilots, so we'll take a look at some of the data that we've collected from those pilots, as well as testimonials from people that have actually used it. Speaking of people that have actually used it, we'll have Kathy then talk about her experiences with it. We'll give a little bit of a preview of what's to come in this next year, and then we'll wrap up, and any time we have left over, we'll save for Q&A. So let's first start kind of at a high level, like I said, and talk about the current state of summer food. So the USDA data shows that summer food is just 1/10 the size of NSLP, feeding 27 million fewer children. Now, SSO aside, I wanted to ask you, Matthew, if you had a kind of suspicion about what this might be, what causes this.
Well, how much time do you have, Andrew? Got lots of ideas on reasonings behind this, but I'll kind of start at a large view first. When you look at the differences in the program with school lunch, you've got more of a standard structure, and so kids are already going to be in school. You've got cafeterias. They're a little bit more sophisticated. They've already got POS systems. Where if you look on the flip side, on the summer food service program, these are more what I'll call, let's say, voluntary sponsors, to where they want to get these meals out to sites. So it's not that captive audience that our school programs have. But then at more of a granular level, if we look at this, there's also the the realities of the summer food program is a shorter program. And so when you start looking at this from an administrative point of view, now you've got a small amount of time to ramp up and then it's over. Um, it's a lot less loose because your sites are out and about. They're not in a structured place like a school building typically. Um, Sometimes it's more difficult to find your staff members because summer's a popular time for vacations. And then when you look at what we've started noticing is, just the whole paper process and the lack for technology. Again, it's such a short period of time that a lot of people have been challenged on what's the best way to actually go through and administer this program and keep up with all those daily meal counts.
Oh, wow. Geez. Thank you, Matthew. Uh, so rewind, this kind of brings us back to where we were a few years ago when we really started looking at this, when you started talking to us about what we can do here, Matthew. And, we had a belief that, this technology is the key, not to solving everything. There's really probably not a good way of doing that, or not a ready way for sure. But, one thing technology absolutely can do is it can start to, uh, completely knock out or just reduce the sheer volume of these low level tasks that sponsors and site users have to deal with just to administer this program. And freeing up some of that bandwidth and that slack will really allow for some of the higher level types of tasks that would need to get done to start to chip away at some of those big program issues. So, the idea here is really simple. We eliminate the paper process. It's very messy and it has a lot of externalities that really, it's opportunity cost. It prevent some of the things down the road.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Andrew. And one of the unique and exciting projects and really products that I got to work with right when I came here is working with states on this concept. As state agencies, they're fully aware of these inefficiencies, and it's really more of the, okay, well, what can we do to help this out? And so I'm very appreciative of having forward-thinking state agencies who have worked with us to not only agree with us on this hypothesis, but really work with us on how can we address this and make this better for both the state agencies and the sponsors.
All right, thank you, Matthew. So before we get into the demonstration, let's real quickly kind of talk about what digitizing meal counts will do. The big thing is we're reducing what we call TTS, time to sponsor. So a meal count entered into a application on a mobile device is practically instantaneously transmitted to a sponsor versus a paper process that can take, I've heard 2 weeks thrown out there, a couple days, certainly, some amount of time to get from a site to the sponsor. And then there's another amount of time where the sponsor has to more than likely enter that data into some sort of spreadsheet or, some sort of internal calculator. And then we're also looking at using a digital app. It actually has validation. So you can bolster accuracy. You can essentially force consistency amongst users. And last thing that we do is this is all digitally authenticated. So you're actually augmenting accountability with this. You know exactly who is signing the form, where they signed the form, et cetera, et cetera. So big picture, what this gives us is by removing some of these inefficiencies, we're freeing up valuable time, which allows the sponsors to do those high level tasks. Balancing sites fiscal efficiency, is one of the big things. Meaning, can they decrease the amount of food waste that they have, and can they also increase feeding? Those are big things that instantaneous data allows them to actually do in a meaningful way. Whereas before, you might already be on the next trend by the time you get the data recorded to make adjustments for the first trend. One of the other things, if you have transparency and accuracy, what you're also going to yield is a greater accountability, which turns into claim validity. Consistency, really that helps streamline things like training, helps streamline things like support. Then you've also got accuracy if you pair that with a claim import pipeline, which we have, that feeds directly into your core system. What that's really going to do, and this is huge, minimizes a lot of the needless math errors that exist out there in this space. Just simple human mistakes that happen every day to each of us. And the last thing here is this will lower personnel resources, or really the time needed to actually accomplish a lot of this basic stuff. And the big picture here is if we make summer food easier to administer, the end result is more children get fed, or at least that's what it should be. All right, so next let's go ahead and do a demonstration so you can see what the heck we're actually talking about. So what we have here is a split screen view. On the left, you're seeing my iPhone as a site user would see it. And on the right, you're seeing a sponsor view. And so what we're going to do is we're going to count meals on the left. And then once we hit submit, we're going to go ahead and refresh, and we'll actually see that data come into our sponsor dashboard here instantaneously. Okay, so quickly let's get a lay of the land here. At the top of the page, what you're going to see is a site summary. And so essentially this is showing you just who has and who has not reported on any given meal. We'll come back to this in a minute. And down below, you have a site reporting details section that is going to go through and give you specific sites, which you can easily search for here. So you can see, quickly at a glance, if you're looking for a particular site, if they have given it to you or not. So on the left, I'm going ahead and I'm going to go ahead and choose that same site. And we give you the option as a site user, you can have more than one site that you're assigned to. Once I've picked the site, I'm going to go ahead and choose to receive a meal. I can start inputting things like temperature, how many meals received. This is all essentially inputs, including leftovers. And you'll see once I enter the leftovers in here, it will actually increase the total meals available to 30. So 25 plus 5 equals 30. And I can also change the delivery time and date. So for instance, if I receive the meal at a different time. Once I've completed that, it'll give me a quick summary. You can receive meals separately from when you serve them. So once you have received a meal, then you can go ahead and go in and serve that meal here. So clicking serve lunch, or I guess in this case, tapping. What you'll see now is step 2, and this is where you're actually serving the meals. And you'll see the site user is just incrementing up and down. So they're just tapping. They can't actually enter in the meals here in any other way. They can't use their keyboard. They can just tap. And when they're done, you can see at the bottom, it'll say that the meal, it tallies at everything for them. So we've served 10 meals here.
All right, Andrew, I'm going to jump in here just for a second. One thing I want to point out is from the UI perspective, if you noticed, he talked about just being able to tap for the meal counts. This was something that, as we were working on the development piece of this, we didn't want to have the sponsors with an option to go in and just enter how many meals they serve. We wanted it to be an actual count happening at the time of service. So what you'll notice is that there's plus and minuses, and those will only go up one meal at a time. And so this helps with the integrity of making sure that those meal counts, they're counting them correctly and accurately at the time of service, and not just going in and entering meals to submit to their sponsor.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Matthew. So moving on to step 3 here, what you'll see here is essentially your odds and ends. So if a meal gets wasted or if a meal came incomplete, you can enter those in. But before we do that, you can always go back if a child arrives a little bit late and you were just kind of wrapping up, or maybe not late, but right before. So you can come in here then, step 3, and if any meals were incomplete, they were missing milk, et cetera, you can put those in here, and you can see that the totals are updated. Now these don't count as served meals, but it will reduce your meals available, your leftovers. So the final page here, you'll see just a quick summary, and then there's an affirmation there that says, yes, I affirm. And then you get a confirmation page just showing you that this is complete. And when you're all said and done, you get check marks all across the board so that you know what has and what has not been completed. So coming back over, we'll focus on the right-hand side of the screen now. The site user has sent their data. And so what will happen when we hit refresh here is you'll actually start to see that was First View Elementary. You'll start to see that lunch has been served. And you'll see right here that the not reported count of 9 will change to 8 because we just reported 1. And that will show up under the reported section as 1. And same thing down here, you'll see this lunch will fill in. All right, so once we click on this, we're going to see a heads up view of all the data. So, and real quickly, we can also see that there's a big PDF button there. And this is going to show us a programmatically generated PDF form. And what's one of my favorite things about this is just how clear and legible this is. You don't have any dirt or water that's appearing from somewhere on here. And the best part is you can actually read the signature. It's digitally signed, and you have a time and a date stamp at the bottom, so you know when it was actually received.
Yeah, and from the state agent's perspective as well, Andrew, this form should look very familiar, as we basically just copied and mirrored this information that was going to pull into this form from the USDA daily mail count form. So it's got all the information that USDA requires on that daily mail count.
Perfect. Thank you, Matthew. So we can also see here the ability to add an additional count. So if there's a need for revision, site users can do this as well. But I, as a sponsor, may have a need to edit this meal. And so I can go just to the data that I'm looking to change, make my change, and go ahead and click add. And again, I see the very similar UI. It's going to tell me, okay, here's your confirmation. And what it's going to show now is we have 2 revisions. So the revision 2 is the one where I serve 8 meals instead of 7. Each of those will have a PDF, but only the most recent will be used. And then down below, we also have a section that lets you leave a comment, or you can even attach documentation. So if there's actual physical paper meal count or some note that you wanted to include in the record, you could. And I wanted to show off this feature too before we go too much further. So this not reported section is one of my favorites in the application. And a lot of what you're doing as a sponsor is just making sure everyone's where they're supposed to be, doing what they're supposed to be. And this button really quickly shows you any outstanding sites. In this case, we're looking at lunch. And you can see who is assigned, who's the site supervisor, so that you can quickly, it's essentially a call list, so that you can quickly call or text or email. I think a lot of people email, and go down your list and figure out exactly who owes you a meal count. So next, let's go ahead and look at the reporting on here. So we have daily, monthly, and custom reports. And you can see a summary up at the top by meal. And then down at the bottom, you're going to see a more detailed breakdown that includes sites. So you can choose the date that you want to go to, and you can also download all this information into an Excel. So if you want to pull some very specific figures, you'll have it all here. And this is perhaps the feature that people get most excited by. I can download what we call a form archive. And for this given date range, it's going to give me a folder, and within every folder is a day, and here's every single meal count form for that given day. So it's pretty powerful. And then here we're getting into the sponsor manager, and this is where you can handle user administration, and you can also look at your site details. So here we're looking at a site, what the address was, which particular site users have been assigned to it. Okay, so next let's go ahead and show you how you actually set this up. So you're already doing the work once in Core. So what we figured we would do is we would make this as simple as possible and save the users from having to enter in any additional information. So we pull all the relevant application data over from your state system and automatically populate meal counter for your sponsors. So we'll show you how that happens next. And once I'm all logged in, what we'll do next is we'll actually go into our normal application area within Summer Food. And then we can choose a different year if for some reason we want to. We'll just go ahead and use what's in here, 2018, 2019. And once we go into the applications, we'll see, and this is going to be updated. This says Easy Meal Manager. That's the old name. It will say Meal Counter. You obviously need to find your sponsor. So you can enter it all the usual ways. And then once you have your sponsor, you have now 2 buttons that you can use. Request account gets you started. So this is where you can input the sponsor name, first name, last name, email address, phone number, and this will actually create the first user account in Meal Counter. So that's how they get access to it. Once they've done this, it'll send them an email. That email will prompt them to set up a password, etc. Once that's done, you'll get a green check mark that just shows you it's been set. And then you can see on the right there, this is the initialize. So this is where we're actually going to take and bundle up all the data and pull it over into from your applications in your state system into Meal Counter. So we just click this initialize button, and you see here that 6 sites are actually going to be pulled over. And this can take a little bit longer depending on how many sites you have. This is 6, so it doesn't take too long. And you get the same green check mark. And what'll happen here is you'll get a link like this. You'll go ahead and click it, and it'll ask you to set your password, as I mentioned earlier. And then once you've done that, you can log in and you can see all the sites that we've pulled over and the information that it will contain for each site. So it'll include their serving days. It'll include what meals they're serving on those given days. It will include the maximum meal count that they can serve. And here you can see some of those operating days, meal count. You can see the days that are highlighted or the days that they've checked off. Meal Counter currently lets you make edits to those if you need to. A future version probably will not. It'll all happen application side. And so here, what we're doing is we're starting to transition to adding in site supervisors and other users there. And really, it's pretty straightforward from there. The time it takes to set one of these up is approximately 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how many sites you have. It may be more. But most people, it's just such a nice time saver for people that have, if you're coming from the school, you're trying to wrap up school, this makes it super easy to jump right in and be ready for summer. So
Yeah, and the big thing here, Andrew, is as a sponsor, you've already entered all this information for this state to approve. And so now, instead of having to re-enter all of that information, it's just that quick initialize button that you showed them, and all that information now is ready in the app and ready to roll.
Absolutely. So now let's take let's go look. We've Quentin Tarantino this, so we've seen what the sponsor and the sites do during summer. We saw how we set it up using Core, but let's fast forward and let's say we've counted a month worth of meals, and we'll show you just how easy it is to produce a claim, and this is amazing. Okay, before we show you what happens in Core, we'll just go ahead and create a little bit of data here. So this is in our dev environment, but I'm going to go ahead and just count a meal real quickly for this site, Pinnacle Park. Let's do like 9, something like that. Okay, so 9 first meals, 1 of everything else. Okay. All right, so jumping back into Core, if we go to the claims section and we click claims for summer food, select the month, and what will happen is we're going to see, once we go into this case, let's go ahead and modify. We'll see 2 buttons there. Upload easy meal claim data. We'll rebrand this to Meal Counter for this summer. But what we're doing is we're actually now pulling data from Meal Counter into Easy Meal Manager. And so let's actually see if it worked. And there we can see Pinnacle Park. And they have counted 9 first meals and 1 second meal. There we go. There's a claim. Real short claim. Normally, obviously, there would be a lot more data here to pull in. So next, let's talk a little bit about what we saw in 2019. So we ran a small pilot in 2018 and a little bit of a larger pilot in 2019. And the big thing that we saw, and these are survey results. So we sent out surveys to the sponsors and we asked them to fill them out. And the ones that use Meal Counter, they actually increased the number of sites they served by 53% from 2018 to 2019. Sponsors that used Meal Counter also decreased their time spent documenting, managing, and claiming meal counts by 47% from 2018 to 2019. And just to explain this process a little, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and Andrew, we were real excited about these as well. I mean, just obviously getting started in 2018 and then coming into 2019, it was pretty incredible. We were real pleased with the number of sponsors we got, and that it was kind of like that confirmation of the hypothesis that you brought up earlier, that we truly are starting to see, hopefully programmatically, that sites will increase, time spent should decrease, which all in all, hopefully we'll get to that feeding more kids.
Absolutely agree. I didn't expect to see as big of a difference. Now, this is survey response, so we don't from this data set we don't actually know if their number of sites did increase, but they're telling us their sites did. So a bit of context: we sent out these surveys. The first survey we sent in early summer, and we asked them to report from 2018. How many sites they had, et cetera, what that experience was like. And then we asked them essentially the similar questions, but now on summer 2019 towards the end of this summer. And so that's where the difference came from here. And the data is a direct comparison. So we only took into consideration sponsors that filled out both surveys. Now we'll, throw out a quick caveat. This was a small sample size. We tried to get this out to everybody, but it's a little bit hard in the middle of things to get people to fill out a little bit more, even if it's a small survey. So one of the things we'll be doing as a follow-up to this is reaching out to all of our summer sponsors that were nominated by the states and doing a more detailed interview style longer survey to get to some more data on this. We're really excited though, just based off of this provisional numbers here, the level of impact that Meal Counter is already making. Honestly, I expected this to be at least 3 years to see some sort of a change, but it seems like it's happening a little bit quicker. Now, what's great is this is still what they're telling us from a survey. We actually also have data that we pulled from the app to see if we kind of get a different level of insight. And I'll go ahead and take this moment to apologize for my color choice here. This was originally just internal numbers, and I guess I probably should have made it Meal Counter green. But here's a summary of all the data that we had in 2018 versus 2019. And the more colorful colors are individual states. Those are colors at random, not to be representative of the state. The black row at the bottom is a total, but we're not really going to look at that because we had some new states join us in 2019. So the purple is really where we're going to focus on, because that's a direct comparison from 2019 to 2018 of states that participated. And so what we're seeing here, we'll start off on the right here, this 417%. So this is the increase of the number of meals we tracked in our mobile software. So we went in 2018 where we had 250,000 meals to over 1 million. And these are just meals tracked in the software. And so I would just, quick caveat, I don't want people to think that this is actually, growth. I think what's happening here is we're seeing a difference of participation. The first year that we ran this pilot program, fewer sponsors and fewer sites were part of it. I think people were dipping their toes in. And then what this tells us then is 2019, more people were actually willing to take this further, to count more meals on it, to have more sites participate. And you can see that by these other two stats here. This is the actual just number of meal counts that were handed in. So we went from high sixes to 27,000, and that's roughly the same, 412%. And we saw a similar amount with site growth. What's not the same is this 274%, and this is just looking at a count of sponsors. And so I think what this is showing is really that we're having, of the sponsors that returned, they were more willing to have more sites actually use Meal Counter, the application, or maybe they even directed them to do that, versus the tried and true kind of paper counting methodology.
Yeah. And something else too, Andrew, to think about. Another thought we had was that number with the sponsors not growing at the same percentage growth as the sites is. It could also mean that because of the efficiencies that were experienced in 2018, that we actually saw some of the larger sponsors come on in 2019. So sponsors who may have 15, 20 sites under their sponsorship versus maybe someone who only had 5 to 6 on the first one. But either way, the numbers were certainly exciting for us to see.
Absolutely, and actually, I can confirm that anecdotally. I know several large sponsors, 2019, that decided to come on board. So I bet you're right. So that data, though, is still very big picture, and it doesn't quite make sense going from a very small pilot to a larger pilot. So one of the things we wanted to do is really do as granular of a test as we could to kind of create that A/B type of number for you. And it's not great just because, again, we don't have the first year we didn't have a ton of people using it. But what I've got here is a list of all the sponsors that used the app in 2018, and we compared their usage from 2018 to 2019. And what we saw is a site growth of 119%, meal count growth of 243%, and meals served 167%. So with this 114% that we had at the beginning there, it's not nearly as big of a growth here. And I can tell you, kind of going through this data, a lot of it is we had a few sites that dropped participation and didn't do as much, but we had other sites that grew. I mean, you can see here the 100 or 1,800% growth for some of them. So these numbers, it's a little bit of a hard thing, I think, until we get to next year's data to really say conclusively. But we're generally seeing bigger increases in meal counts and bigger increases in meals served. So this definitely echoes what we saw before. People are more excited and more willing to participate. And I can't speak to some of these sponsors that didn't do as much this year compared to last year. But in general, we're seeing bigger trends, or the trend is on the whole up.
You bet, Andrew. And if you can't tell, we certainly do enjoy the data and putting real numbers behind what we're trying to do to also help you at the state agency level augment and show just how helpful these programs are. So I think you can see by the last couple of slides, Andrew's doing a fantastic job of really not only making this product better, but also analyzing it so that you at the state agency can have this information to show that it truly is helping you out in your program administration.
Absolutely. One of the other things that we're doing, just a quick preview of 2020, is we're going to be able to look at this from the opposite side. This is all meal counter data, but we're going to be able to better catalog data in your core system so that you can see what number of meals are responsible in the actual claim system on the claim side. Um, so real quickly, but we want to just kind of bring up some of the feedback that we received. Again, we're going to be doing some long surveys for 2019, but I wanted to throw up some of our 2018 feedback. And so the most powerful thing I heard on the left was from Tim and Kathy from Kentucky. And this was maybe like day 5 for me, November of last year. And what they were talking about was they were really excited for this program, and so they actually ran a little bit of a control group, and they compared those numbers against those using Meal Counter, and it reduced the number of reviews with counting findings from 38% to 0%. And I remember it very distinctly because that just seemed so incredible to me to hear that. And so I had to ask, and basically, well, it's computer math. It's not people math. And then it suddenly made sense. Like, so much inefficiency in these problems come from just having to take and 10 key in paper data and do math along with it. It's like TurboTax versus filling out your IRS, your W-2s by hand. I always double and triple check that stuff. Man, you can always still make a simple mistake, and that can cost you. So we see that just in taxes as well as with summer food. Some of the other feedback that we received, Julie Pruitt from Columbus Rex and Park said this has cut back on a significant amount of waste given the real-time reporting available to this. So that speaks to the program efficiency we talked about. The lag time between when the meals actually counted to when the sponsor gets that data and can do something about it, either decrease the number of meals their vendor is providing or increase the number of meals to meet the demand from the children. If we can reduce that lag time by a week, even a couple of days can be pretty powerful for these sponsors. And then Alyssa Morrison from Operation Food Search in Missouri, she said, I asked her, they're a huge proponent, and she said, well, it just changed everything for us. And so I think that's the transformative power that we're talking about here. Okay, so next what we wanted to do is play the interview that we recorded last week, or Matthew recorded last week with Kathy. She was gracious enough to kind of give us some insights from the state agency level. Like I said before, Kentucky was one of the first states to be a big proponent of this program. So it's really interesting. She's been here from 2018, 2019 to watch this program grow and develop over the years.
Excited this afternoon for a good friend of ours, Kathy Gallagher from the state of Kentucky with the Department of Education. I wanted to take a quick moment to let Kathy introduce herself. Kathy?
Well, thanks, Matthew. My name is Kathy Gallagher. I am the program manager for the Summer Food Service Program in the Kentucky Department of Education, and we are part of the School and Community Nutrition Division. So we're in with the National School Lunch folks and CACFP, and I'm excited to be here today.
Wonderful. Well, thanks. Well, before we dive too far into this, you want to give us a little background on your program? I know that you oversee the summer food program there. Maybe just a few quick stats and maybe a few things you're proud of with your programs.
I'd be happy to. This was a really good summer for us here in Kentucky. I should say for the children of Kentucky. We did have more sites this year. We had 2,916 sites, which was a 12% growth over last year. So we know that this program could grow every year that much, and we'd still not reach all the kids that would benefit from meals. So we really make it a goal to grow the program every year. So we're pleased we had that kind of growth. We also served more meals this year, a little over 3.2 million meals. And that represents about a 10% increase. So we're really, really glad to see that. And specifically, we've really been pushing our sponsors to serve all summer. The kids that need those meals when school gets out in the spring need those meals until school's back in session in the fall. So we've seen them respond. And this year, I'm very pleased to report we had a 16% increase in meals in July alone. And last year we had a huge jump in July. And August has been steadily increasing as well. So I think that's something that our sponsors have done really well, is just to really recognize the need and respond to it.
Wow. Well, congratulations. Those are impressive numbers. So good to hear. And like you said, for the kids especially. So before we jump in, a little personal background. Can you share folks with how you arrived here at the Kentucky Department of Education?
Sure. It's kind of a crazy route getting here, but my background's a varied one. I have a master's in clinical nutrition, and I spent some time in critical care nutrition when I was first out of college, and I liked it, but I kind of got burnt out on that pretty quickly, so I entered into pharmaceutical sales and did that for quite a while. Eventually, I was a stay-at-home mom for a while, and then I started a business, and that's what I did until I came here. I had a decorating business, actually, and then was ready to get back into the real world and had an opportunity to come work here. And I started National School Lunch, and when the decision was made to give summer its own home, we were very small then, there were two of us, I loved summer, and I decided to go with that program. And now we've grown. I'm the manager, and we have 3 consultants, and so our little summer team is, we do SFSB only, and we work on that year round, and we stay really busy.
Nice. Yeah. Probably a good indication of why those meals are growing. Well, congratulations. That personal decorator, I might might need somebody to come take a look at my office now sometime soon.
I don't know. Really, really expensive, Matthew.
Good stuff. All right. Well, appreciate you joining. We've been working with Kentucky DOE for the last couple of summers on a project for some summer food mobile meal counting. So I wanted to start off, Kathy, just asking you, why was this important for you and essentially for your sponsors?
Just to be honest, Matthew, we really review everything we do every year, and we try to streamline the program for our sponsors as much as we can every year. We survey our sponsors every year, and one thing we would hear over and over and over again is there's such a heavy workload. The administrative workload is so proportionately or disproportionately high for this program. And so we want to come up with ways to preserve integrity and at the same time streamline the program. We don't want people to become discouraged because they have to have all these papers for daily meal counts and so on. So this is something that it's probably been about, I'd say over 3 years ago, we just started talking about, wouldn't it be great if there was some way to capture this similar to a POS in a school cafeteria, but of course not all of our sites are even in a building. So we weren't really sure what it would look like, but this has been something that we've wanted to do to just streamline the process and at the same time improve accuracy and integrity.
Yep, that makes good sense. So you mentioned about 3 years ago. Can you tell us a little bit about what that process looked like, or how you guys started this, maybe investigation, and how it came about for your team?
I guess, we were aware that there was a product out there that folks could use to do meal counting, and we made that aware to our, we made that information available to our sponsors, but it was something they had to seek on their own. And we had a few people use that, but it really wasn't catching on. And, a few years ago, we sent out information to our sponsors that had sites in school cafeterias and told them how to use their POS to capture meal counts, just to try to get away from the paper. I think one sponsor actually implemented that. It just didn't catch on. Just didn't. I don't know why it was different. Nobody really picked up on that. So, we didn't really think we would develop anything like this. We were hoping there would be something that we could use. So, basically we just tried to make the information about what was available out there to our sponsors, just so they knew.
Yeah. Makes good sense. So I know I've had the great opportunity to work with you guys over the last couple of years as we've been working and developing this and getting it rolled out. And obviously we've got contracts that we work with and getting this set up for you guys, but would you say, what's been the biggest obstacle you guys had to overcome, either internally to get administration to buy on? Was it funding? What would you say has been your biggest hurdle you've had to overcome so far?
I would say, I'm just going to say probably timing and technology. And by that I mean, just to be honest, this year we had not a real good coordination between some changes with the technology and when our program starts. That should be a one-time occurrence. I just think that happened this year because there were some really good changes made to the system, but it was after we'd already started summer. So I think that was it decreased the enthusiasm from our sponsors for it, and there were still some problems with it. So we kind of lost some users because of that. But I think the other side of the technology obstacle, and this will probably just be something we'll have to chip away at, anytime there's something new, and this is really, I think, a pretty simple system to use, but when you have something new and different, you have resistance, you have people that are more comfortable with the familiar. People will say, this sounds really great, but when it comes right down to implementing this at, a variety of sites, a variety of site users, site supervisors, level of comfort with technology, sometimes they just it's easier to default to what they're used to, even if it's
You're
not the better
exactly right.
choice. So I think that's
Yep.
just going to be an obstacle that we have to be constantly aware of. We do a lot of cheerleading, and you know, I'm sure we'll probably talk about how to overcome those things. But I think,
Yeah.
you know, just
Yeah, that's a
us. Go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say that's a great point. I was just gonna say, so then what's it been like, these last couple of summers, kind of working with the CTS group and kind of give some of your colleagues an insight as to how it's been getting it set up, training and so forth for your sponsors.
Well, I'll say that whenever we needed something, you all responded. And, you know, if we needed training material, you all put that together for us. If we had issues with at any point, you know, sponsors setting up their users, or, you know, there's been a really good response, a lot of communication back and forth. I'm not always the
Great.
person that was in the direct communication line, but I know that Tim Cooper had a lot of
Mm-hmm.
discussions with your staff, you know, trying to
Yeah.
work through anything that comes up, and there was very high responsiveness from you all. And I think that, and I don't know how other states would do this, but we're very hands-on with training and with technical assistance with our sponsors. So even though we used y'all's training materials and they're great, I think we did a lot of supplemental technical assistance, a lot of phone calls. We did live, Skype
Like walkthroughs.
meetings,
Yeah.
yeah, live walkthroughs, and basically, you know, would walk through, just visually show them how to, everything from setting up their users to how to do the meal counts to how to um, do revisions, how to submit
Mm-hmm.
their numbers for the claim, everything, pull that into their claiming system. So I think that's just, we kind of do everything that way. We still do a lot of live trainings because we like that one-on-one connection with our folks. You know, we're only in contact with
Yep.
these people a small portion of the year. So we're, I mean, that maybe that's either, you know, how we see the need to have 4 people dedicated to summer, or
Mm-hmm.
because we built it that way, we need 4. I don't know which came first, but
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
we
and
just,
the
you
numbers
know,
you shared certainly shows the success that
yeah,
personal touch
it's,
seems to be having. So
yeah,
very
and
cool.
it's just good customer service. So I think that that's something we did a lot of communicating with sponsors and a lot of communicating with CTS, and I think that will just continue as this becomes more readily or more widely used.
Yeah, fantastic. So, yeah, I know you guys have had a few pilot customers, using this the last couple summers. Any successes you'd like to share with the group or neat stories with the technology?
Um, you know, I think that it's just great when people embrace this, and you know, they become experts as much or if not more than we are. So that's really been great. The people that have really decided, yes, I want to do this. And we had a few sponsors that used it for all of their sites. I will say
Wow.
that's not the norm right now, although I hope that's what we'll go to someday. So, you know, working with them and their you know, they wanted to have input too, and their communication with us, and you know, their ideas about how to, you know, what would
Yeah.
help them. That helped us, and I know that helped you all to get that feedback.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a great
and
point. Are there any particular either features or items that have come out of those conversations that you've been excited to see?
yeah, I mean, just let me think about that for a minute. I know that the thing that everybody
Sure.
was most excited about um, really is the ease of their claim, pulling the numbers in for their claim. In fact, we had quite a few sponsors that still did paper, but then they would enter those into Cartwheel so they could just pull those numbers over into their claim, which is kind of
Okay.
not really where, but you know what? My
It was a
feeling
good,
was,
nice little
well,
workaround.
yeah, nice little, but you know what? That got them familiar with the system, and maybe next year they'll start
Mm-hmm.
counting. You know, some of them used the counting app at the sites to some degree and did paper at others, and that may continue. I'm sure it will for a while. But you know, if it was
Yeah.
somebody that only did the paper, entering their meal count into Cartwheel, they became very familiar with Cartwheel, and that's not bad. That's good, and maybe it'll be an easy step moving along to implement the meal counting app and actually take that paper part of it away. But that
Right.
probably one of the things that we had some of the best feedback on was
A lot
just
of feedback on.
Yeah.
Cool. What about, you mentioned you've got, I think you said 3 review staff that work with you. You know, they're out obviously doing their reviews. Did they have a chance to review any of the customers using, or the districts using this? And did they have any feedback? Were there decreases in, you know, claim errors, more efficient time, or anything?
Yeah, well, and actually we do some reviews here. We do new sponsor reviews, and then we do have a vendor that we contract with for reviews. And
Okay.
I don't know that we had enough numbers to really give a report on that. You know, they did.
Sure.
I will say that they were pretty excited about being able to access Cartwheel, because we gave them access it ahead of, almost like a desk review, ahead of the actual on-site sponsor administrative SFSP review, to verify. I'm trying to think, there's not a whole lot to verify. It just depends on how they used it, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it really, I envision that greatly decreasing the time that it takes to do a sponsor review, as well as taking the need to verify a claim away. I mean, there'll be some things we'll still have to look at. Maybe down the road, I envision looking at revisions and why were revisions done and how many were done and that sort of thing. But we really gave that a pass this summer because it was so new. We thought, well, people are going to do revisions. We can't really question that right now. They're still getting used to the technology. But as far as a decrease in, yes, I'm sure there was a decrease in claiming errors to some degree, but we had so few sponsors reviewed that did 100% app meal counting that I don't really know that we have any hard data this year.
Sure.
But it's certainly something
No
we're going to
problem.
be watching. Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Well, let's take a quick look into the future. What are you guys anticipating or hoping for in 2020?
Well, you know, we would like to be able to get more people using it in 2020. We started last year out with trainings starting in February, and we promoted this from day one of trainings, and really people got very excited about it. So now with a little more experience behind us, I'm looking forward to getting out there. I would really like at all of our training sessions, and I think this is very plausible, to have at least 1 or 2 sponsors that used it and became really comfortable with it, to be able to talk about it. And that worked with mobile meals. When we got sponsors that had done mobile meals, talking to everybody else, the fear factor just went away. So I'm hoping we can use that same sort of peer encouragement, you know, with sponsors at each live training, being able to say, yep, I used it, and here's what I liked about it, and, you know, don't be afraid of it, that sort of thing, and really encourage other sponsors.
You're right. That peer help is always a big point. And you mentioned your mobile routes. You guys have some interesting, you guys have quite a bit of those.
Yes.
Do you have any numbers there in front of you about your mobile routes?
I sure do. We had 85 of our sponsors providing mobile routes, which is really just under half of our sponsor number, with almost, or at least nearly half of our sponsors did mobile meals. And we had on our mobile routes 891 sites that were stops on mobile routes. So it's almost 1/4 of our sites are on mobile routes. And it, you know, that's sort of is emblematic, I guess, of Kentucky. We're so rural, and our sponsors used to say, every time we got together with them, somebody would say a version of this statement. Somebody would say, we just aren't reaching the kids that need this the most. And I think that was because they were serving in brick and mortar locations in a little community, and a lot of the kids that needed these meals were not there, and they weren't getting rides into town for a lunch. So the response has been great, and people are out there, you know, serving in rural areas. And this would work really well. I guess one of the things we are still working on overcoming is, and I think this is a project you all are working on, to be able to use this without the availability of Wi-Fi, because it's just a very common, very common scenario for us in Kentucky. We're in areas that a lot of Eastern Kentucky in particular, you just don't have Wi-Fi. So it would really be so helpful for those people that are out on mobile routes in particular to be able to use this.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, well, as we close out on this, any advice or suggestions or just last words you'd like to share with some of your colleagues who might be thinking about potentially looking at some mobile meal counting?
Well, I'd say, take a look at your reviews and look at the type of findings you've had. We know that when we look back a couple years ago, our greatest number of findings were in the area of meal counting and claiming, and a lot of times it was just human error from moving numbers from one form to another. And so I think that it eases the process for the sponsor when it comes to meal counting. It reduces the amount of paper that people have to keep up with, but it also has potential to greatly increase integrity. I think the other thing that people should consider is that it really gives a lot more oversight of the sites across your state. I mean, not only for the state agency, it's wonderful that we can see eventually. I'm hoping the majority, if not all of our sites, we can see in real time the type of meal service that's going on. But it's also great for the sponsor to know that they can get a handle on what's going on at their sites just so quickly and not wait on
that count gets submitted and they can see it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a huge advantage. And I think advice, though, I would say is just be prepared to have a realistic amount of or a realistic expectation of the amount of training you'll be doing and technical assistance. Everybody knows how hard it is to make a change, and this is a really big change for our sponsors. It's just there's a comfort level that some of them don't have, and so it takes a lot of encouraging and being available whenever there's a question. And boy, if you got to set up another training or some phone calls or whatever is needed, I think it's really important for the success of something like this to just be ready to do those sorts of things. And we're excited about it. We know we don't expect this to just catch on in a year and everybody's going to use it. We know that it's just, for us anyway, maybe different for other states. I think it'll grow each year. I hope at some point it's just people just go crazy and everybody's using it, but we're working towards that.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, Kathy, I certainly appreciate your time and great insights. Again, kudos to you and your staff on all the success that you've had, not just with technology, most importantly, those numbers. It's great to hear the growth, 10% growth in your numbers is very, very exciting and rewarding for the work you guys do each day. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Matthew, very much.
All right, Matthew, thank you for speaking with Kathy. Really, really interesting hearing all of her insights. So what I want to do next is just give a little bit of a preview of what's in store for us with 2020. So there's 5 big things that we're working on. There's a handful of little things that we're working on as well, but we'll save you that time. Basically, one of the features that we're looking on just really improving is our offline counting mode. We're also working on better user administration tools. Again, one thing we learned from last summer is just the abruptness, the switch over from normal school year to summer is really sharp. So anything that we can do to help make that process easier and smoother. And so one of these things is giving state agencies and sponsors better tools to be able to get their people to the right place and to get them doing what they need to do. And then on the flip side, after the meals have been counted, is to improve reporting. So doing a couple enhancements to the existing reporting suite that you've seen, making it easier to fine tune what data you're looking at and just really do an Excel of just the data you're interested in. And also a couple new reports. We really want to build a whole dashboard for state agencies so that they can, on any given day, see how many meals were served, or start to look at some of the trends with, how do we do for the month, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then also like a site-specific view. And then multiple serving line support and vending are two other new features that we're hoping to bring in 2020. Multiple serving line just lets two users at one site collaborate, and then vending allows us to, as a sponsor, I go to one tool, Meal Counter. I can watch what my site users are doing, and I can also place my orders for those sites to my vendor so that I can make sure that I am, furthering that fiscal efficiency, able to fine tune the meals and essentially complete the loop. So real quickly, I want to revisit the conversation we had earlier now that you've seen the application. And these are the benefits I think that this application provides. Easy setup is a huge one. That abruptness switchover, if you have a large number of sites that you'd have to essentially rekey in all this application data, it's almost untenable. So being able to simplify that, it seems so easy, but it's such a big deal. Saves so much time. Also, because we're, and not at first, I think if people are managing both paper and application, it's going to actually increase a little bit of this burden. But over time, sponsors that have told us, no, I force people, I only let them use Meal Counter, they're like, it saves me a ton of time and energy with training because everyone's doing the exact same thing. They're using the application, it's consistent, and again, it forces some of the validation. So, they don't necessarily have to, go over and over and over the rules because the app can enforce many of those rules on its own. But the biggest thing by far is it just takes the paperwork problem out of the equation, and that leads to the programmatic claim submissions that we showed you, which is extremely powerful. You don't have to have in this pipeline any human math or any handwritten notes or numbers taken into consideration at all. It's all done and tracked digitally, so that it has a high level of efficacy. From a higher level, though, we hope this is going to be able to do is promote the addition of additional summer food feeding sites. And, really what this is hopefully feeding more children. Going back to those USDA numbers where we looked at the switchover as 1/10 the size. If we could grow that by a few percent, those are millions of kids getting fed that weren't getting fed before. So that would be huge. It benefits directly for the sponsor being able to increase that efficiency, helps them be able to economically handle more sites. And then, lowering their overhead helps them be more successful because now they can focus more of their time on some of those higher level tasks that we talked about before. And providing them with management tools can give them much deeper insights like these reports that we talked about, so that they can really look at how things are going throughout summer and make adjustments and tweaks. And they can also evaluate and see areas that they're strong or areas that they may need a little bit of improvement. So we're definitely very excited for this application.
You're exactly right, Andrew, and appreciate you running through the demos with us and kind of showing all the exciting even data that we've had. While it is a small sample size, we are real excited about this. So as we wrap up here today, we're getting ready to close out here. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to enter those in the chat. But I wanted to kind of take a look at, if I'm a state agency interested in maybe potentially looking at using this type of an application, well, what's in it for me? How is this going to help me in my administration? And first thing that comes to my mind is the program growth, or what I like to call accessibility. So if we're able to get our sponsors to use this type of a tool, the big thing is as more sponsors use this tool, you saw on the stats that we showed you that decreases the time. If they're able to decrease their time, the hope is that we get more sites participating, which is then going to increase that accessibility of the meals to our kids. As Andrew mentioned, our goal is how do we help you guys feed more kids? So we want to see this program grow. Another huge point for us as a company, and hopefully for you as a state agency, is the program integrity. By implementing this type of a flow of information from the sites all the way up to the state agency on those meal counts, and taking out those instances where there could be a chance to misplace a paper or illegible, it's hard to read. The integrity of the numbers that we should be getting should increase as you use tools like this. And then lastly, I look at it from the administration standpoint of a state agency. By using a unified tool and a similar tool for all of the sponsors, you're able to increase your training. You know what to expect, and you know how you can help your sponsors and encourage them to use this to decrease their time of administration. Also, I look at it big from the administration standpoint on the reviews. So when your staff's out doing their reviews, they have access and a view into this claim data even before they get out on site, and so it helps to that review cycle. Summer's already such a short program. Anything that we can do to help those review times, and then lastly is just getting those accurate meal counts. So I think there's a lot of benefits. Those are the three big things I see from a state agency, and that we've kind of heard from the states that have been participating with us over the last couple of years. So as we talk about next steps, again, if you guys have questions, a lot of times you participate in something like this, you may have seen something that you were interested in, or something comes up afterwards, you're like, I wonder how they're doing this, or what we could do to use this type of tool. Anytime, feel free to reach out to your account executive with any specific questions. We're happy to help at any time. All of you who are participating on this webinar today, you'll get a follow-up from us with the link to this webinar, so you can go back and look at it again if need be. I'd also encourage you, though, to check in with your colleagues. We've got the CTS Customer Forum out there. It could be that you think of something after this and you'd like to see, well, what do my colleagues think about this, or how are they handling this? Feel free to post that out to the Customer Forum and get some feedback from your colleagues. And then lastly, Andrew and I just want to thank you for taking the time to participate with us. We know it's a busy time, and we appreciate you guys joining us this afternoon. We've got a little bit of time here left, and we'll certainly be willing to take some questions and answers. Andrew?
Thank you, Matthew. I really appreciate it. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. And yeah, my number and information is on there. If you have any questions for me, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. We're very excited with this product, and more excited for the prospects of what this product could do for y'all, and could do for, in turn, students and children around the country. Thank you.